It was a beautiful morning here in the Savage Gulf. Nice day for a hike. Gonna do a pretty good one today. We're gonna go down the Stone Door Trail, down into the Gulf, and get on the Connector Trail. A lot of wildflowers along there, hopefully. And we're gonna go to the Cator Savage Cabin. It was built by some of the early settlers here in the Savage Gulf and inhabited by a gentleman named Cator Savage. And so we'll learn some history today of the Savage Gulf. Hope you'll enjoy it. So come along with us. Let's go hiking here in the Savage Gulf. It was a beautiful morning here in the Savage Gulf. Nice day for a hike. Gonna do a pretty good one today. We're gonna go down the Stone Door Trail, down into the Gulf, and get on the Connector Trail. A lot of wildflowers along there, hopefully. And we're gonna go to the Cator Savage Cabin. It was built by some of the early settlers here in the Savage Gulf and inhabited by a gentleman named Cator Savage. And so we'll learn some history today of the Savage Gulf. Hope you'll enjoy it. So come along with us. Let's go hiking here in the Savage Gulf. We are at one of the overlooks here at the Stone Door. There are 2 or 3 nice overlooks that you can view the Gulf, and we're going to, you can see where the creek runs, and we're going to go down to that creek, which is 9/10 of a mile. We're going to take a left, go about 2 miles to the Cator Savage Cabin. But when you come to Stone Door, you got to come out here on the overlooks and enjoy the views. All right, here we go down through the Stone Door. This is the actual Stone Door that people talk about. About 100 or so steps. It'll take us down to the end of this, and then we'll go down about nearly a mile to the bottom of the Gulf. So kind of a cool little area here, the Great Stone Door. Well, we found a whole mess of trillium, most of them Sweet Betsy trillium, but also looks like we have a yellow trillium right here close to us. These are beautiful, and the Cumberland Plateau and the Savage Gulf area is just full of these beautiful trillium wildflowers this time of year. And a lot of times you'll see big patches of them like this. Just gorgeous. All right, we've made it to the connector trail, and here's where we're going. Another 2.5 miles to the Cator Savage Cabin. I think you're gonna find it very interesting. You can also, there's a lot of places you can go here on the connector trail. Collins Gulf Trail, Sawmill Campsite. We just ran into somebody who's been camping out there last night. Hobbs Cabin, if you really want a long hike from here. That's another camping site that you can go to. Right here by the big creek. We'll be crossing it. There's a bridge on down the connector trail. We'll cross the big creek and make our way up to the cabin. So after a little rest, we're gonna be on our way. All right, we've made it to the creek crossing. This is Laurel Creek, and some beautiful cascades over here. The connector trail was beautiful. It's taken us forever to get to this point because so many wildflowers and they're gorgeous. We had to stop and take pictures, but that's part of the fun of hiking. So we've come to the bridge. We're gonna take a look at some of the creek here. Very beautiful. Still about another mile and a half to go before we get to the cabin, but let's enjoy the trail. All right, we found us a little cafeteria here with a waterfront view. This is where we're gonna have lunch, and we're gonna enjoy the view, have lunch, and then we're gonna make our way up to the cabin. We've come to the bridge that crosses Big Creek. Right now, Big Creek is just a dry creek bed. Right here it is. Probably going underground at this point. But it's dry today, but it's been a rather grueling hike on the connector trail. It's very rocky, and we should be getting fairly close to the cabin, I would hope. But that's where we're headed, so let's cross the suspension bridge, make our way to the cabin. We're a good 2.5, 3 miles away from any kind of paved road. We're out in the middle of nowhere, so to speak. We are deep in the Savage Gulf. Somebody left a barrel here. I don't know if that was used for moonshining or what, but we'll let that speak for itself. You see a lot of those laying around out here in the woods in the Savage Gulf. Well, here we are coming up to the Cator Savage Cabin. Been a long hike to get here. We finally made it. Some beautiful beautiful wildflowers along the way. Now we're going to have a look at this historic old home place that is hidden away deep in the Savage Gulf. All right, my hiking buddy Deb, we've seen her on numerous episodes, and she knows a lot about the history of this Cator Savage Cabin. She's talked to a gentleman who actually was raised here and lived here for several years. So Deb, we're going to let you talk about it and kind of go over the history with us, if you will.
Thanks for joining us at one of my favorite places in the Savage Gulf. This is the Cator Savage Cabin, and it's couple of miles from about nothing, but where the big creek, standing behind the camera guy here, Savage Creek and Collins come together right here, made for some pretty fine farmland. This area was settled mostly by the Savages and the Thompsons, and in about 1860, Decatur Savage came out here and built this cabin. The original cabin was over here with this L on it, and the cooking fireplace was right here. These cabins were usually about 18 by 26, which is pretty small in today's standards. I think we call that a tiny house. It is likely built of poplar logs, and most of them are hand-hewn, and you can still see the adze marks on it. Some of the things have been replaced by the park system when they acquired it in the 1970s. And this little spot is pretty ethereal and spiritual, actually. They've kept a roof on it, but haven't done any more restoration to it whatsoever. Paul Jones was the last known person still alive to live here between 1935 and about 1952. He was just a young man when he was here, and then he raised 4 children here before he moved off the property. And he married a young lady right up on the hill, he told us. At this time in the history of Savage Gulf, there was about 40 families living in this area, and they were quite closely connected. And he tells us the orchard was over in this area here, and they had about 30 or 40 apple trees, which was very common in those days. And when he lived here, this was the old kitchen, and they stored apples up in the loft area of the cabin. The old barn was over there to the northeast, and that's the roadway out that leads back to civilization. If you'd like to go inside for a real quick tour, it's a little dark, but it's kind of interesting. Well, you can see inside here that this is a very small and very, very simple place to live. Paul tells us that back when he was here in the 1930s, this was the kitchen area. There was an old stove here. And of course this window's been boarded up, but these planks here are used to cover the chinked area where the logs don't meet. in a pathetic attempt to keep warm. The bark is still on the joist holding up the loft. There's still evidence of some hand-hewn wood on this end of it and some handmade nails, which tells us pretty much what the age is. The planks on the floor are original and they're full of rat holes, of course. And this is where he and a couple of his brothers slept. It's just hard to imagine. And then Mama cooked in here also. And the loft is quite an interesting place. And that's one of the original ladders from what we've been told. You'll also probably notice that there's no well, there's no running water here, never was. There's a spring about 1/4 mile down the creek, and amazingly, that's where they got their water. They would take 2 5-gallon buckets on this torturous 1/4 mile walk, I've been down there, and haul it back here for the family's use and to water the animals in the barn. It's just hard for us to understand how people lived and thought everything was just perfectly comfortable back in those days. This is the original tiny house living, and they thought it was just the way everybody lived. I hope you've enjoyed the tour.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed the hike today. It's been rather strenuous at times, rather grueling, but very educational. Cator Savage Cabin, here tucked away deep in the Savage Gulf, but we've also seen some beautiful wildflowers along the way. We're gonna head on back. It'll be a long road back to the top. So we're gonna get going, and we'll see you next time on another Tennessee Trail. Go over the history with us, if you will.
Okay. Hey y'all, welcome to one of my favorite places in the beautiful Savage Gulf. This cabin is part of an original cabin that was pretty much about twice this size, and we'll pan to it.
You have something in your hair. Hang, start all over. Hang on.